reconciling these records because they don't want to take the risk that their participant, even if they have every confidence that they're not actively trying to cheat them, isn't doing a good enough job of keeping records themselves, and as a result of that, might be doing things that are costing them money. In fact, there are whole industries in place referred to as recovery audits that do exactly that process, go back after the fact and recover for people whose records are not accurate enough to maintain proper controls in place. But in a blockchain environment, because what we got is real-time sharing. At the time that a quote is made and the quality inspection is passed, the product is approved as received, then there's no reason not to move ahead and have a payment take place. And in that scenario, there's not even a need for an invoice anymore. An invoice is really a legal document. And I've been tracking this proof of concept for a couple of months. And just a couple of weeks ahead of time, I realized that it was going to conclude with a delivery taking place between a load of cotton being sold from a company in Houston, Texas, to a company in China that was going to be delivered in Qingdao on the weekend before I got there. And so normally in international trade today, when you have an international trade delivery like this, even if you've unloaded the product and has physically changed hands, catching up with all the paperwork necessary to confirm the transfer of ownership on international trade. A study done by Maersk recently indicates that implementation of blockchain technologies with smart contracts and IoT sensors in global trade in general will reduce the cost of international trade by 15% by eliminating a vast majority of the paperwork that's currently required. And that reduction in cost of 15% in turn will cause a 5% increase in the overall global economic product. So we're going to see a huge impact on these technologies. Another artifact that can be stored on blockchain is self-sovereign digital identity, so that you can identify a person, place, or thing. Hello? You can identify that, and an individual can not only their traditional name and address information, telephone number, date of birth, but documentary information like driver's licenses and national IDs and passport numbers and biometric information at the same time. Fingerprints, voice prints, retinal scans, facial scans, so that you can tie that information uniquely to that individual to provide protection against identity theft, to confirm their professional credentials, to make sure that everyone authorized to receive government services can receive those services while eliminating, in effect, fraud associated with that, and allowing organizations, businesses, banks, and so forth to know their customers and know their suppliers. We already see, for example, in the automotive industry, where this is being applied by tying together blockchain and the Internet of Things. As we move from billions to trillions of things connected to the Internet, how are we going to know that this car appears to have exceptionally low mileage for a car this many years old? You can check the blockchain to see what was the latest reading on the blockchain and verify that, well, gosh, I know you say you've only got 40,000 miles on this car, but there was a blockchain update last week that said you had 140,000 miles on the car. I think you've been playing with the numbers. The list of industries impacted by blockchain, if you don't see the industries, and we've got industry consortia, blockchain consortia in many industries, actively working to develop use cases and best practices for blockchain implementation. And thousands of these best practices and use cases have been developed. This is a tiny, tiny little subset across just a handful of industries, just to give you an idea of how comprehensive the impact of blockchain technology is on business. So this is all very exciting. Artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, 3D printing,
augmented and virtual reality, and perhaps even more important than the others, blockchain technology, especially when you tie blockchain together with AI, with IoT, and so forth. All very exciting, but you know what? None of this matters unless organizations, unless your customers have a strategy for blockchain transformation, or more explicitly, blockchain-enabled digital transformation. That's where they need to go. It may not be where they think they want to go, but that's where they need to go. Every one of your customers needs to understand what this really means to them. Most emerging technologies are point solutions. They apply within a particular process or at a particular geographic location. But blockchain is different because it provides the decentralized infrastructural glue to tie all those points together, not only across an enterprise, but across entire business ecosystems and supply chains. It means that you can digitally transform not just business processes and business models, but whole ecosystems. A study was done last year by a major IT outsourcing company, looking at the most common hurdles to blockchain adoption. And at the very top of the list are understanding blockchain and its use cases, communicating blockchain to key executive decision makers, evaluating the cost benefits of use cases. But you can go on down the list and not a single one of the items preventing businesses and other organizations from moving ahead and implementing blockchain has to do with the current technical capabilities or limitations or constraints of blockchain. Rethinking their business model in this environment, rethinking the designs of their business processes, and then using any and all technologies needed to implement that new vision. We've learned over the years that what works best is what's called third horizon planning. You develop the vision first of where the business ought to be 2 to 3 to 5 years down the road. And it's going to require change in your part that if you're going to continue to survive and succeed, you're going to have to change your business models. With the combination of blockchain-based certifications and artificial intelligence capabilities, finding individuals who can provide needs for a given period of time and validated skill sets for certain technical capabilities is going to be very easy. It won't require companies to use third-party staff augmentation services. So if you're thinking that your staff augmentation business is just going to continue to chug merrily along without any changes indefinitely, I urge you to rethink that idea. But at the same time, you can leverage the understanding of your customers' businesses and the understanding of key technologies to add a great deal more value. We're going to be thinking about changing your processes, changing their processes, changing their business models, changing your business models, changing the entire ways that the ecosystems work. That's a lot of change. But as the great historian Henry Steele Commager put it so well over a century ago, change does not necessarily assure progress. Where we were in, say, maybe 1998 or 1999 with the internet and the World Wide Web, at that point I had lots of people saying, well, fine, I've seen Amazon and FedEx, but who else is really using it? Well, similarly, there are hundreds of companies and dozens of industries that are actively using blockchain. The growth rate is tremendous. It is still small compared to the overall global economy. The best predictions are that within the next 2 to 3 years, we will see widespread adoption among probably all of the global Fortune 2000 corporations, not across everything they do, but significant live production implementations. As an example, Walmart announced last week, week before last, I guess, 2 weeks ago, earlier this month, that all of their suppliers of fresh produce will be required to participate in a blockchain-enabled system to track the source of that produce back to its original source, however many tiers back in the supply chain it is, which of course is thousands and thousands of companies all over the world. That kind of requirement is going to continue to stimulate the growth, in their case in retail and ag, but we're seeing similar things going on in many other industries. Probably even more important, but AI increasingly is going to depend on blockchain. Blockchain is going to help to enable AI, as it will many others. We have time for what, one more question?
Yeah, there are a couple of people asking questions, but since we are running out of time, I'm giving the mic to Mr. Malik. So here's one final question. But guys, if you want to interact Jack after the session, you can, of course, you are free to approach him and talk to him. We're running short on time.
So besides cryptocurrencies and smart contracts, what are some of the other artifacts and applications of blockchain technology that have been successful?
That's correct.
And the second part of the question was?
What are the other areas that you foresee that there is a near future to implement the blockchain technology?
Where do we see it growing in the near future? Okay, excellent question, a good one to wrap up on. All right, so let me start by answering the second part. I think the fastest growing areas are financial services, and it's really not so much about the cryptocurrencies themselves, it's about using blockchain to facilitate everything from trading of securities and stocks to movement of funds around, even just...
These panelists, at least most of those panelists here, represent our buyers. These are the people on the other end of the spectrum. These are the client CTOs and CIOs that are dictating what resources they would need in the next few years. These are the people who are setting the strategy and the technology requirements for their organizations, which in turn will turn to requirements of skills and resources for companies like us. So hopefully at the end of the session, we will all walk away with understanding what kind of technologies, what kind of resources, what kind of solutions we can offer in the next few years to get to these companies.
Bangalore and 20 more cities earn 50% to 200% through pre-public launch offers by top builders across India. Call Divyendra Chowdhury, and for more details visit www.gcglobal.in.
All right, thank you guys. Again, just as everybody knows, sponsors are the lifeblood that's feeding this conference, and for that matter, a lot of these important events here. So if you can, or if you have a need for any of these products, please consider buying from them. And then I have another quick update. This is a request from our PAC committee. As most of you guys know, ITserve this year has entered into a couple of litigations with the USCIS. There was one of those that we've already won, and then there's another in process. At this point, you know, our legal counsel and the PAC committee is requesting for members to volunteer and add on as plaintiffs to our existing suite. Just to explain to you the process and where we are and what is expected out of us, we have Jonathan Weston, our lead attorney on those cases here. He's going to take a couple of minutes to just talk to you guys about what is happening and what's the best course of action from this point. And then I promise I will hand it over to your moderators. Jonathan.
Thank you. As you mentioned, we're looking for individual companies to join in with the motion suit that challenges the shortened approval periods on H-1Bs. And the first question I always get from folks when we talk about individual companies litigating and challenging the government is, will the government retaliate against me? The short answer is no, but it's answered no for a variety of reasons. The first of which is it's illegal. The government can't retaliate against people. It's against the law. It violates not only criminal statutes, but other statutes as well. The more practical answer is they're not capable. The agency, unlike yourselves, is technologically inept. They don't actually have a computer tracking system that allows them to actually identify cases as they come in and vector them for punishment. The program that they use to track cases was created in the 1980s, and it hasn't changed since. It's all very data entry specific, and having used the program myself as a former government attorney, I will tell you that it's almost impossible to find any specific case with any frequency or efficiency. The other real practical answer is a conspiracy to punish or retaliate against somebody requires two things: motivation and competence. And keep in mind, we're dealing with federal government employees. Motivation and competence are not their strong suit. So there's really not a real incentive for the government to do anything to a particular plaintiff. It's actually quite the opposite. Having spent years in the government, what we notice is the USCIS in specific hates to be sued. They're terrified of litigation because they have a tendency to lose because many of their positions are crazy. So when they see somebody who has sued in the past, they tend to go out of their way to accommodate them and not to draw future lawsuits. In administrative law, which is the type of law that I practice, it's called, there's deference. You are very deferential to certain entities. I used to manage litigation, and what would happen is I would get these cases coming to me and they say, this is a potential litigation case. And I would go through the case, and a potential litigation case means be very, very careful. We don't want to be in court. So I'd go through the case and I'd say, well, why is this a potential litigation case? And they'd say, well, that attorney sued us 3 years ago. and that's all it took to scare the agency, is that somebody sued them 3 years ago, and we pretty much would bend over backwards to accommodate them and approve their petition just so we wouldn't have to be back in court on a completely unrelated case. So, I was asked to kind of discuss that. If the agency will retaliate, no. Having my own personal experience and my colleague that I do a lot of work with in this space, the two of us were both former federal government trial attorneys and litigators. We've now filed together in excess of over 100 cases or so against the government. And the two of us have never seen it happen on either side of the fence, either when we were working for the government and now in private practice. We've never seen them go out and target and have a punitive campaign against an employer who has exercised their right to sue. So if any of you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. If you have concerns or more specific questions, I'm more than happy to discuss this with you and go over some of the specifics and some of the anecdotes and what I've actually seen and practiced in real life. And hopefully, together, by working together, we can inject some sanity back into the system and some predictability for business owners so that it's not a wild crapshoot every time you file a petition. So thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. We appreciate everything you're doing for us here. And the PAC team will go ahead and send some information regarding what they would need for member companies to be plaintiffs if they choose to. All right, thanks again. Now again, we're coming back to our marquee event of the day. I know I've started out with that and had to have a segue here. But to help us walk through this panelists and derive the most benefit out of their short amount of time that we have here, we have two moderators. We have two people here that really don't need an introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. This session is going to be moderated by Kishore Kandawalli. Kishore, as most of you guys know, is a successful IT services company owner, exited recently. He's now the CEO of 7 Tablets. He's also an advisor at ITServe. Kishore, if you will. And then our co-moderator today is Deepali Khadakwan. She is our Speakers Committee Chair and is the CEO of Precision Technologies here out of New Jersey. I'm going to let the two of them take us through this journey here. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil, and our sponsors for this event. I'm ready to get started, Deepali. How about you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. Ready to get started?
Absolutely.
How about you, audience? Ready to get started? Yes. All right, we have a star-studded panel lined up for you guys, and we're going to bring them up momentarily. Let's start with Alok Tyagi, and he's the CTO of G Treasury. Please hold your applause until everybody comes on the stage, please. Alok. And then we have Amit Seshan, CTO of Blucora. Amit.
We have Bill McGuire, CIO of Dinocrats Group. Hemant Joshi, CTO of Claim Genius. Mahesh Sudhakaran, Chief Digital Officer of IBM. Shekhar Puli, Managing Partner of ReanCloud, which is recently sold to Hitachi.
And we have Sridhar Kajipeta, is a Global Technology Officer of Fujitsu America. And we have Venkatesh Kaluru, who is the CEO of 7 Tablets. CTO of 7 Tablets. I'm the CEO of 7 Tablets. So, as you guys have seen, this is a wonderful star-studded panel. Both Dipali, myself, and the speaker committee put a lot of effort to assemble this. This morning, we heard about blockchain, AI, and technological evolution from Jack Shaw. And our CTO panel is going to discuss further about where the technology is leading us, and more importantly, what are the opportunities for us, services companies that IT serve? Where can we deliver solutions in the next 12 months, 24 months to the clients? And from the client perspective, we're going to hear from them. So the title is your business going to be suffocate, survive, or surge ahead in the tsunami of digital transformation? That's what we're going to talk about. We've prepared some questions, and Dipali, lead us off. Let's get to it.
Sure. Yep. So since digital transformation is in our title, I'm going to start the question related to that. As we see, digital transformation is everywhere. Either companies figure out how to outsmart and outpace their competitors, or they'll be marginalized. So how's your company dealing with it, is the question. Mahesh?
Okay.
You want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. Hey, thank you, Dipali, for the opportunity, and thank you, ITServe, for the opportunity to be on this panel. I'm very excited to be here. When it comes to digital transformation, we always need to understand what digital transformation starts with. So digital transformation is all about transforming a business, right? What does that mean? In today's world, transformation is all about speed. How do I improve my speed at which I can respond to do two things? One is, how do I understand what my clients want so I can build products better? The second lever is, how do I change my business model to deliver what clients want, right? So these are the two levers that business transformation actually addresses. Digital today is a method, right? And this has been going on for a while. It's all started off probably 15 years back with the internet, right? Everything was about e-commerce. Then we went through mobile. Then it became agile, right? And now it's all about cloud. It's about blockchain. And future probably is going to be about quantum. So technologies are going to keep adapting. But then the fundamental is to how do I enable these two levers? So big part of what we do as IBM is definitely we are a technology company. Yes, so we build good technology. But the second part that we actually do is help clients with in the journey by educating them, right? Because we handhold clients to be to understand what the technology can do, what it cannot, what are the first few things that they should focus on. So big part of how we lead is by educating clients, and we could discuss more.
Sridhar, you want to add some light on it?
So digital transformation is all about digital outcomes, or business outcomes. So if you look at any business, by 2020, there is no vertical that is a safe haven from digital disruption. So what does it mean? It means that at least 47% of your revenue of each vertical is up for grabs. So if you don't create digital channels, you're basically kissing 47% of your revenue goodbye. So where we come in is help established enterprises identify what is that 47% by way of additional growth, by way of savings that we should be collectively achieving through digital transformation. So way back when e-commerce was just beginning to pick up, there was a very kind of articulative paper published by Chris Anderson called The Long Tail. So in every business, that long tail with digital disruption is now more relevant. So if you look at, I'll give you a couple of examples. If you look at an established bank, if you continue to do banking by asking customers to come into your branch, that's the head of the tail. But the long tail is if you take the bank where people reside. Where do people reside most of the time these days? On Facebook, on their phone. So you need to take the bank to where people are. If you take another example, transportation, or I'm from Detroit, so I'll use automotive example, right? So for the big three to want to solve transportation needs by selling a vehicle, that is traditional business. But by solving it with mobility as a service, by giving you an app so that you go from point A to point B and not necessarily own a vehicle, that is the long tail. So everyone is now trying to get into that business by creating applications that extend your enterprise to give you that additional revenue. So if you apply this template to every industry, there's always that additional digitally influenced revenue that you can create through applications, through IoT, through blockchain. Those are all enabling technologies. But you need to sit down at the table, think about how you can create that long tail. So that is really digital transformation.
Sure. Thanks, Sridhar. Alok, you would have some comments on it?
Once again, thank you for having us. Great conference here. I will just add to what Mahesh started it, because if you really look at transformation, we all have been part of the computing industry for last multiple decades. Every decade there has been some transformation. So what's different with digital transformation? It's really about the speed and change and the notion of business agility. Now it's more about how do you build a business that really adapts change. We don't know what technology will be there 6 months down the road. Now we are talking about blockchain. 6 months down the road, there'll be something different. So how do you really build a business for change? And that requires orchestrating the business very differently. Whether it is business model, whether it is talent practices, the operational practices, and how you get deeply connected with the customers. Really knowing if a customer has a need, how do you effectively serve it faster and better and cheaper than the next competitor? That's what digital disruption is all about. Because come to think about it, Fortune 500 companies, half of them will not be in Fortune 500 company just in the next decade. If you come to think about it, there was a point in time, we used to say unicorn was a big deal. Unicorn is a startup that gets $1 billion valuation. Anyone counting how many unicorns we have now? Hundreds of unicorns. Who will replace S&P 500? Technology companies. Companies that know how they can adapt and change. Come to think about Amazon. It's probably the biggest companies, hundreds of thousands of employees still operate like a startup, still disrupting, still operating like day one. How do we build that DNA? That's what digital disruption is all about.
Gentlemen, thank you. That's an overview of digital transformation. Digital transformation is a buzzword these days. It covers a number of things, AI, blockchain, whatnot. So in my experience at 7 Tablets, I've seen a number of mid-cap, medium-level enterprises. They're still behind in embracing cloud. For IT-served members, we're all service providers. I'd like this panel to address what are the opportunities in cloud for companies like us, and how can we get prepared for it? And Shekhar, you recently exited from a cloud company just last week. And why don't we get your input?
Sure. Thanks, Kishore, and thanks everyone for inviting me on the panel here. Before I get into the cloud, I think I just want to take a minute to go back to the digital transformation and what it means, and to add to the panel so that I could connect the cloud to this whole thing. There's 2 data points I want to start with. There was a study that was done where from 2000 to 2015, 50% of Fortune 500 companies have disappeared from the list of Fortune 500. That's a pretty staggering number if you think about it. 50% of them have flipped. And what was the single biggest reason for that? The digital transformation was part of it. If you think about the Ubers, the Airbnbs of the world, the Netflixes of the world, that kind of disrupted the whole thing. And what digital transformation has done is it has leveled the playing field for everyone. And similar to how the automobile, the industry revolution, the electricity and things kind of enabled, cloud is the biggest proponent of that whole digital transformation. It is the underlying core piece of that infrastructure that is helping you fast track that. Things that would have taken years to transpire for a business model to come and expand globally. Think about WhatsApp from the point, or Facebook, from the point of inception to when it became global. It was in a matter of single-digit years that transformation has happened. And that's possible because of the ubiquitous nature of the cloud and how that has helped fast-track some of that innovation and disruption in the market. In terms of where we are in the cloud, even though we are talking about all this disruption, for us, as part of my company, we've been in this business for 5 years, and as Kishore mentioned, we just exited last week. We closed our business with Hitachi has acquired us. But the reason why we went down that path is we're super excited about the future of the cloud, more so than what we have done in the first 5 years. It's still just scratching the surface in terms of the cloud and its reach. The companies and the industries that we are talking to, whether you talk to Fortune 500 or you're talking to small businesses, everybody probably they're at a point where they have experimented and they feel comfortable, and it is now widely accepted. Now the race for the market positioning and market jockeying is starting. Just in the last couple of weeks, I met with pretty much top Citibank, UBS, Credit Suisse, all these banks who are now all of a sudden realizing that, you know what, we need to hit the gas pedal now. So the opportunity is present right now, and for us, the opportunity was, we didn't feel like we could do it alone, and we needed a big brother, somebody to join forces with, so that we could fast track that acceleration. And for everybody here in the panel and also in the audience here, this is the opportunity, because for the next 5 years, the growth is going to be phenomenal, and guess what? The talent is non-existent. So whether you're in training, whether you are in services, whether you're building solutions, products, the opportunity is unbelievable for you to come and disrupt that space.
Awesome. Hey, Bill, you have run bigger companies and smaller companies. What's your take on mid-cap companies staying behind in cloud, and what's opportunity for us?
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to participate. Appreciate that. I've been a cloud proponent since the early days, and have either participated in pushing applications to the cloud or actually now helping clients. If you think about it, there's over 27 million small and medium businesses in the US today. And while we think everybody's in the cloud, everybody's not in the cloud. People are still, it's like digital transformation. People are still trying to define that. People are still trying to find their way to the cloud. And one of the early things I did to take advantage of this, just to demonstrate the value of it, and why I think we're just touching the surface in many areas, depending on the level of business, is I pushed applications out that really aren't strategic to the company, right, or the corporation. And a good example is email and desktop publishing and those kinds of things, right? I mean, why not turn on Microsoft Office 365, whether you like them or not? It's a solution, right? And then all of a sudden, I don't have to worry about supporting that anymore. So instead of having, you know, a whole team of email, you know, taking care of that, it becomes somebody else's problem. And I'm focusing on what's core to the corporation. So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity and growth. I agree with your comment. I think that over the next 5 years, it's going to grow exponentially. I do a lot of work with government agencies today. You know, they've been very reluctant. You know, fortunately, DOD is making a big move in that direction if you do services to DOD. But from my own perspective, when the CIA decided to sign up for Amazon Cloud Services, there wasn't anybody else in the government that could say they couldn't secure it anymore, right? So I use that as a banner when I meet with some of the other agencies to get them to you know, think about moving to those cloud technologies. So I do think there's great opportunity. And there's great opportunity in how you present it and how you offer services.
Hey, Venkatesh, I've watched you over the years taking some large government agencies as well as medium companies taking them to the cloud. What's your take? Where should my room full of competitors focus on in cloud service offerings?
So Kishore, big thing that we have seen, big businesses, they have deep pockets, and they can have the luxury of moving from the in-house hostings to in-house services to cloud. But when it comes to the small business and the mid-sized businesses, these guys are penny pinchers. They are trying to save every penny. The biggest things what I've been working with these small businesses and the mid-sized businesses is that what is your strategy in moving to the cloud? It's a long-term strategy that you have to figure it out. You have existing systems that are running, that you cannot afford downtime on these things. So we have to start working on categorizing these projects into 3 different categories I see. One is a new development when your project is building, so is that architecture cloud safe and moving it to that, so you do not have to waste any of that. Or that you have the operational issues that you have, like what Bill mentioned about moving to Outlook. You do not have to maintain a network administrator, a server, and make sure the power backups and everything are running. The advantage is to move it to a cloud where hardware is one of the need, or as a service you can move to a cloud. The big thing that we have to, as a CTOs of any company or any services team that are doing is, are you aligned with the business transformation and the digital transformations are aligned together? These alignment has to happen with a limited time period, that you do not have infinite time. Biggest thing is that how quickly you can transform your organization and give the value back to your clients.
Okay, awesome. Mahesh, would you like to add something more?
Sure. One of the Hello? Yeah. So any conversation around the cloud is also a conversation about data, right? So because both of them are synonymous to one another. And one of the things that you'll realize is if you look at all the enterprises, big, small, less than 5 to 6% is the workload that's on the cloud today, right? So that's one data point for you. So all this hoopla about cloud, less than 5 to 6% is actually on the cloud. The second thing that you need to realize is 80% of world's data is behind the firewall, right? So enterprises own 80% of the world's data. So all these businesses out there, the new businesses that have come up, have only harnessed 20% of the world's data. So 80% of the data is where enterprise intelligence is residing. And all of this will move to the cloud, right? So as IT services companies, you need to be ahead about how do you move enterprise applications, which represents this 80% of data onto the cloud. And the strategy here will not be about whether it's going to be an Amazon cloud or whether it's going to be an IBM cloud or an Azure cloud. The world is going to be multi-cloud, right? That is the reality, right? In the old world, you don't talk about whether you use x86, what brand of x86 computing you use. It's irrelevant because cloud is going to go commodity. So you have to be prepared from a services standpoint for a multi-cloud world. and how do you manage applications in a multi-cloud environment, that is going to be key to all of our success.
Great. Thank you. Sridhar, why don't you cap us off?
So let me add to some of the trends that we see in the market, especially as they relate to you guys who serve mostly small to medium businesses. So the enterprise data centers are closing down at an alarming rate. Everything is moving to the cloud, and as Mahesh said, whether it's some of the big players like Microsoft, Amazon, you can add Oracle, SAP to that list, and more mission critical workloads are moving to the cloud. So the opportunity for you is really how do you work with smaller enterprises to actually not just lift and shift the workloads, but take the time to transform these workloads. So a lot of times there are rogue applications in the enterprise. Now you can look at SaaS solutions for that. You can make applications more cloud native, which means you can change applications at a rapid rate that companies like Uber and others do. And why? They don't do it for fun. They do it to be very responsive to changing marketing needs. So cloud is going to be a big factor. Even though it's been around for 12 years or so, there's a lot more money to be made for all IT services companies going forward in cloud-related services revenue.
Awesome. That's, as you can see from all the CTOs, there's a lot of opportunity in the cloud. I'm seeing it every day. Mahesh, you mentioned about data. Data is everywhere. And we need data for machine learning. The buzzword these days is machine learning, deep learning, self-learning. And I'm confused. Are we at a point now where we're not teaching the machines and we're learning from the machines? Now the deep learning and self-learning. And I'd like you to talk about that. Let's start with Hemant. You haven't gone yet. Can you talk about machine learning, deep learning? Sure. Where are we and where are we headed?
So, so who is learning, right? Little bit of both. We have, of course, we are training computers, machines, to learn from data and patterns. That's what AI is all about. So, of course, computers are learning to a certain level of accuracy. But at the same time, while they are learning and making that progress, we as AI experts or AI implementing partners for our clients are also learning a lot. One of the biggest unintended benefits of AI is the digital consistency. Once you get to that level of accuracy, it is going to consistently tell you for that particular input what the output is. And if you can get that right, irrespective of how much caffeine the human expert has had, the machines actually can do a pretty consistent job. So that's a big thing we are learning about AI algorithms. The other thing that we are learning is how some of the edge cases work. So think of the problem space where it works, and we know that, okay, it does great job in when your input looks like this, my output of the algorithm is, I can assure you it will be consistent and it will be accurate because I can give you the numbers. But we will also be able to learn the edge cases where it doesn't work or doesn't work with a lot of confidence, right? So those are important cases to know about for us as practitioners, where it's not going to give that high confidence for your prediction. So if I'm working with a client and if I'm able to tell them that 92% of the times out of 100 my algorithm predicts accurately, their first question is, well, what about the 8% of the times? But if you are able to identify that in those 8% of the times you are not as confident as you are with the rest of them, actually it gives a much better use case for your clients. So that's the second thing we are learning. The third thing we have learned, Jack Shaw, who presented before us, mentioned that case where with only 5 examples of a microprocessor chip, not necessarily visible to human eye, the AI algorithm was able to figure out that there is a problem with this chip design. Now, having said that, there are certain problems that are easily solvable with the data, resources, and budget that the client has. And there are certain problems that are going to require more time, they are going to require more resources, more long-term commitment. So that's one of the other things we have learned, that how do you identify the low-hanging fruit? Which problems are easily solved, which problems are harder to get around? Sometimes the data doesn't tell you the pattern that you want to kind of go to your client and say, you know what, we can bring world peace. Not necessarily with the data you have, right? So those are some of the things that we have learned.
Yeah. Sridhar, I read a number of articles that you've written about machine learning, and you're going like this all the time with Hemant. Jump in.
Yeah, so again, going back to the original question, who is learning or who is in charge? We are definitely in charge, right? More and more, what's happening is the power of computing is evolving, and it's taking on other workloads that were not possible earlier, either because of we didn't have enough computing power, data scientists didn't evolve, we didn't have all the algorithms to leverage, but more interestingly, memory has become very affordable, you know. Having terabytes of data either in the cloud or on the edge has become very easy. So going back to, you know, what this all of this is doing, it's really elevating our role to higher creative type of situations where we give these repetitive tasks, pattern recognition being a good example, to where it rightfully belongs. It belongs to machines, so that we can actually do other things. So we would always be in charge. And as Hemant said, it's all about writing the right algorithms, doing the right ingestion of data. For example, let's say we all use Google Maps to go from place A to B. But if all Google Maps did was look at where you're going and what time of the day, chances are that it will miss other influencing factors such as weather and such as repair schedules for the given city. But if it is smart enough to take all those inputs, chances are that the guy who's using Google Maps will get there faster than the guy who's listening to radio or anything, because now, you know, you have all the benefit of the data. So we will always be in charge. We'll always be looking at workloads that rightfully belong to computers, and we will solve bigger and better challenges like cancer research, cancer detection, improving quality of industrialized goods, as we saw in Jack Sass' presentation this morning. So fear not. You know, we are going to make good use of AI, ML, and DL.
Awesome, fascinating topic. Everybody wanted to jump in. Shaker, you're a cloud expert, jump in. I'd like you to be giving 30 seconds a minute because we have a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, so I just want to add to what Mahesh and Sridhar was talking about. You know, the question to me is whether, you know, who is learning from who. It's more about who is intelligent than who, right? So if the answer question is that absolutely humans are more intelligent than the machines. But the context of this one is what humans do is they overlook at simple things. We are too smart and we are too good for our own intelligence. So what happens is when there's a certain acts or checklist of things that needs to be done, you overlook because you're too overconfident you have done those things. That's what you're trying to teach the machines and the artificial intelligence to say, okay, if there are certain things that needs to be done, operationalized, they're better at doing that than humans. What we want to be doing is solving the next problem, not necessarily going back and doing the same repeated things, right? So that's where you look at any problem that you have to do it mundane, repeated things. That's where you could bring in the AI and the machine learning to say, okay, these are the paths that you need to do and how you can do that so that you are focusing on the next big thing and you're solving the actual problems.
Alok, can you pitch in from a fintech perspective? What are we seeing in machine learning?
I was thinking something different. Maybe I'll also chime in from fintech perspective. But I'll definitely speak from the origin of the question. I really believe it's more man plus machine, or woman plus machine, or human plus machine. It's not man against machine. And if you just think about it, when a kid is born, generally speaking, for the first few years, don't they keep asking us why this, why that, why this, why that? And at some point in time, we as a society, because we are limited by the knowledge we carry, we start imposing at some point in time just get away, and then we become a society of the answers. I believe that with machine learning and AI, the knowledge will be so prevalent that curiosity that we had, we will become a people of question. Can we ask the right question? If we can continue that curiosity all our life, that generally we are born with, and not being more about that, because as we grow up, we start thinking about, oh, this guy knows these answers, or whatever they're ignorant about. So I believe that machine learning will open up so many different spaces based on the smartness is already available. We are not limited by the few knowledge that we have, and that curiosity will open up the space that we just don't know about. And I think that's what the machine learning is all about in almost every space that we will start to see in years to come.
I can't pass a deep learning question without having IBM guys jump in. Mahesh, what's your take on it? Watson.
Yes, before I get to Watson, I won't answer the big question, right? I see a lot of people wondering, oh my God, I'm not doing AI. It seems like everyone else is, right? This is the classic fear of missing out, right? To be in terms of numbers, right? When I talk to my clients worldwide, less than 20% of them are actually using AI. So you're not alone, right? Very few people are using AI in production. Why is that? Right? That is because AI does not happen overnight. So there is one of the talks I do is around something called ladder to AI, right? So what is AI? AI is nothing but capabilities that help you to understand, reason, learn, and interact. So that's what AI does. But to do understand, reason, learn, and interact, you need to have capabilities to do machine learning, deep learning. And to do machine learning and deep learning, you need capabilities to do analytics, prescriptive analytics. To do analytics, you need data. So it all starts with, do you have the data? Do you have the ability to collect data, organize data, analyze data? It starts with that. So you need an information architecture to do AI. So I always say you need IA to do AI. All the other things like everyone has, including my company and also our friends in the competition, everyone is on the journey today, and this is early days.
Okay.
Real quick comment to this. I lived the machine learning like Jack mentioned with the aircraft. I mean, they're very intelligent today and they're continuing to do this, but at the core of this is actually some business transformation too. So we can get all the smart machines we want, we can continue to make them better, and yes, we control them. Even you see funny things about robots taking over, but to your point about the data, to me, it also is impacted by how the business is willing to transform itself to actually know what to do with the data, how to use the data, and what to do with what machines can make, can be given the intelligence to impact the business in a positive way too, right? Because one of the cardinal sins we can do here in technology is create technology that doesn't help our business be successful or be profitable, right? I learned that a long time ago. So again, there's some real basic questions around business transformation that have to be addressed along with the data if this is going to be successful and take advantage of these technologies.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. So, like Mahesh said, AI is everywhere these days. So other than the self-driving cars, what are the other mainstream AI applications on the horizon that you guys think? So Amit, from FinTech perspective, you want to take that?
Well, thanks for having me here. And I think I found this question very interesting because when I look out at this hall, I see you guys primarily as the evangelists of AI and the cloud into a large part of the economy that's outside of the Fortune 100. So yes, of course, in the news we hear about, voice is taking over the world, there's Alexa, all of that, there's self-driving cars, that gets all of the hype. But when you think about where AI is really relevant to a broader part of the economy, I think about two things. One is everything that has to do with personalization. So the big companies do this well, Amazon, Facebook, Google, it's bread and butter for them. But once you go into the small and medium economy, a lot of these companies, organizations have never dealt with this. And so bringing AI to marketing, to media management across the small and medium portion of the economy, I think that's a huge opportunity. A lot of that is not automated. A lot of that is not as data-driven as it could be. The other side is, if personalization unlocks more revenue for small and medium business, the other side would be just throughput. So how do you make these small organizations more efficient? And I've experienced this myself, both in my current role as well as in transforming other small companies. A lot of time and energy goes into things that, as you said, are inconsistencies in paper-driven process, or human beings having to oversee things and check to make sure that they're correct, and or human beings needing help with looking at data to make decisions, and that happens across the board. So I think while there's a lot of attention on things like manufacturing, robots, and cars, the vast amount of paper that moves through the world, which happens in healthcare, it happens in financial services, happens in government, happens in legal, those are really the verticals that I would say where we as a group can have a lot of impact by choosing targeted processes and taking them out with AI, as your company does. And I think there's a lot more of that can happen, and this group has a big role to play.
Yep. Heyman, you coming from the product company, what would you say about this?
So that's a shameless plug. I'm CTO of a Claim Genius auto insurance product company, primarily based on AI. So that's a use case that we find very interesting in very simple terms, right? What's on the horizon beyond self-driving cars? So person gets into an accident, they report that, insurance company sends a person to take photos, gets desk review done, 7-8 days later, you send your car to the garage, it gets repaired. It not only adds time and frustration for the customer and insurance company, it also costs insurance company a lot of money, even without the decision being made. And so what we do as a product, where the customer takes the photo and using deep learning technologies, we are able to actually estimate the damages on the car as good as a human expert would visually inspect them, and that usually takes less than a minute. So that's one use case that I can think of. The other use cases outside the industry that I am in are primarily driven by revenue. So like Amit mentioned, for example, look at sports in this country as a kind of vertical. Tremendous amount of work is being done on not just in terms of understanding how athletes perform and when they are at the peak of their performance, but also understanding what makes a certain event more popular than other events. Is the halftime at Super Bowl really worth spending that much money on? These are not necessarily problems that we have looked at. Is the 30-second time slot at Super Bowl really worth spending millions of dollars for? These are interesting problems that are being looked at. The healthcare sector, like Amit mentioned, also has very important implications that are coming up. So I don't know how many of you have called your doctor's office to get the appointment, but there are services that are coming up that are able to not only figure out what's the availability of different doctors in your area and marry that with the ratings that they have for a particular problem. And if you want appointment for that same day at a doctor that is reputed and pretty close by where you live or where you work, those are kind of the practical applications that I'm seeing, which are going to be out there very soon.
Thanks, Mahesh. Yeah, Venkatesh, go ahead.
Going back to the question. Based on the last question that you asked, Kishore, about who's learning and then tied back to the AI, what I feel is that all the AI and machine learning is about building your knowledge base. At the end of the day, AI or even our individual personal learning is an evolution process. We learn, we pass it on to our kids, and they build their knowledge bases. And once we build this knowledge base, how do you do applied sciences against the business that you're working in? I know most of the businesses sitting here are working in multiple verticals, whether it's in a fintech, whether it's a health insurance, whether it's an automobile industries. Each of your team has a vast number of staff who has picked up niche knowledge. The way I see is that the AI will definitely help is to convert that knowledge into knowledge bases that can be leveraged by the tools that are going to crop up in the next few years. That's going to separate some of these businesses, and you can apply it across the world in all the repetitive patterns, or you can apply using the same thing and evolve that knowledge into a better knowledge that you can use that. You can find the pain points, you can find other things and improve on that. So the knowledge base is going to be key for most of these things.
Okay, thanks Venkatesh. So we see devices everywhere and IoT. What you guys would advise our fellow business owners and members as business opportunities in IoT area? Sridhar, you would want?
So, in the area of customer experience, CX as we call it, which is one of the key pivotal areas within the whole digital transformation business, know your customer, KYC. A lot of the retail industry giants, a lot of the banks which do deal in a retail fashion with their customers, they need to have IoT around improving their CX. It's one thing, for you to walk into a bank with whom you've been banking for the last 30, 40 years as yet another anonymous customer, but it's another, thanks to digital technology and IoT devices, for the bank to detect who just walked in and what kind of attention they ought to be giving. So in my area, I focus a lot on IoT in the CX space. And the other is the far-reaching, influence of devices in agriculture, in transportation. The days of when the piece of lettuce that is being transported from California into other parts of the country, speaking about how it is doing, feeling cold or feeling too hot in the car that it is being carried across the country. But now we are able to actually, using IoT sensors, grow the crops, feed the right amount of nutrients and not just transport them. So, the influence of IoT is very far-reaching, and you just need to pick a vertical that you are in, whether it is IIoT or whether it is CX, and focus on those areas and build value on top of that workflow as to what you're able to do. And of course, IoT is the playing field is leveled. You can put it in Azure cloud, you can put it in Amazon. There are so many different tools for you to build your solution around with.
Thanks. Looks like going great. Pin drop silence and definitely engaging. Bill, you want to add?
Yes, thank you. Am I live?
Yeah, that's working.
This one's working?
Yep.
That's a good thing. IoT, there you go. I know. No, I think...
You have to push it up.
We're into that space where everything is connected to everything. I think you've seen the numbers from Jack, it's just going to exponentially continue to grow. I think the challenge for us, particularly in the services business, is how do we help businesses adapt to it, and how do we integrate that with the applications they have to running their business. I just finished an opportunity at a major university where I actually brought that up to the executive team for that university, all the way up to the president. It's, students are coming to the universities now, and everything is connected. And it's how does the university adapt to that? How do they service that? How do they integrate the applications to the devices that are emerging every day? So I think the devices are going to, everyone's going to think of everything they can connect to everything. It's up to us from a services perspective. How do we make sense out of that? How do we integrate that? and how do we make it successful for the entity, whether it's a university or a business, to really make that productive and successful, and make the experience really good. I mean, at the university, it's all about the students, as you can imagine. I mean, I was in college a long time ago too, had a good time, but today it's all about how they're connected, right? And how successful can we be at doing the integration of what they need to do that makes their experience that much better. And we have to think about that, whether it's them or whether it's an employee doing an assignment for us. And I think that's really, you know, as the devices continue to grow, that's going to happen. It's what do we do with them and how do we integrate them?
Thanks. Go ahead, Alok.
The only thing that I will also add and tie the IoT discussion with the cloud discussion. Some of us have got really gray hair. Things used to be centralized computing, then it became decentralized computing, distributed computing. Now it became again centralized computing. Although the pace, scale, and economics is significantly far different than what it used to be in 70s. As IoT start to grow, you'll start to also hear a lot more about edge computing. And you will also start to see the combination between a centralized cloud as well as what does that mean to have computing on the edge where the devices are, and how does those combinations look like. So it's not only just about data gathering, because if you are doing data gathering on the edge and always sending it back to some cloud, some big data center, it gets lost in terms of latency and in terms of the intelligence that we want to build. So again, you will start to see the right pendulum and what these computing models and how they evolve. In fact, Cisco at one point in time introduced something called fog. You know, it was not the cloud, but the cloud kind of came down. So again, start to kind of think about how the computing models and the paradigm really moves as the time goes by. And if I just build up a little bit more on this thing, so when we talk cloud, we talk a lot about AWS and Azure. We know those are public cloud. But you will actually find out as blockchain starts to take the centerfold in years to come, you might also start to hear cloud based on mainframes. And we thought the mainframes were dead. So again, you will start to see some of those technology paradigms and how those changes based on the level of compute need, because in some regard, blockchain is the biggest edge where you are really doing a lot of computing. So again, keep an eye on what, depending on your industry and what you are solving for and the kind of a compute need, kind of a storage need, and what kind of a really pattern that really fits the need for there.
Thanks. Great. All right. How is the panel doing so far? Yeah? Awesome. So I can tell you they'll be here for 2 hours because they're so passionate about it, but there's lunch waiting for us. I don't want to go past 1 o'clock.
Yeah, and that's our DNA.
We've gotten pretty deep into technology. You guys want to show of hands, you want to stay in technology, or you want to ask them some tough business questions? What do you say? Show of hands. You can't make up? All right. I'll make the decision for you. Panel, I personally feel that we're in the midst of greatest technological evolution. And Jack mentioned internet and mobile and digital transformation. This is kind of a higher level question. How do you think that the whole software development life cycle is changing with so much technology coming at us so fast at once? And I'd like Hemant to jump in.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. So software development lifecycle, the bread and butter of most of the things we do, right? So is it changing? Yes, but it's been in process all along. This is not new, as all these different technologies and buzzwords have been mentioned from 80s, 90s, 2000s, and it will go on. Software development has adjusted itself, whether it's agile, all the way from waterfall model to all the different models that we have. But what's going to change are two things I would like to point out, and it's already changing in that direction. One, Mahesh mentioned something important, right? IA leading to AI. So from AI point of view, your software development cycle will have team that not only include developers, but it should also include information architects, solution architects, and some of the data guys, the data engineers, people who make data available, accessible. You can also see the second change in terms of the great chip on the shoulder guys called data scientists, right? Those are the high salary, high in demand jobs. So data scientists are definitely moving the field of AI along, but if you guys remember the old phrase where a software developer would say, well, this works on my machine, those are kind of similar situations that you're finding with data scientists, right? They're doing something on their node or on their high performance laptop, and they're able to produce these models that are wonderful, but it becomes extremely challenging to actually put them in production and to actually use them day in, day out, 24/7, 365 days, and get the same performance that you expect. Because the data scientist has not worked on the performance issues, he has just developed a good, high accurate model. So what I expect to see in terms of software development lifecycle is not just focus on developing these high-end, beautiful algorithms that produce accurate results, but that are also scalable and sustainable in production environments. Those are the two changes I foresee.
Thank you. And I'd like 2 more 30-second responses on topic. Venkatesh, you're a big advocate of hybrid, agile, and waterfall methodologies. In the context of this technological tsunami, what's your take?
Just like Hemant mentioned, the change in the software development has been there from 80s. People did PDP-11 programming languages to C, C++ goes to Java, and programmers have adapted the new programming languages. But while new languages keep on coming to meet the basic needs of what needs to be done, there's also room for AI to be introduced into the software development process itself. The way we are looking at is the introduction of the microservices where people have already built reusable services on the cloud. So the architects are moving away of rewriting some of these usable services and minimizing their effort on software development life cycles. Writing a new line of code means you have to design it, you have to develop it, you have to test it, you have to put it to the continuous development life cycle has to happen, right? To avoid this, the microservices who are specialists in this knowledge bases that we talk, they will be start pumping in more and more services. An example, Google puts out, given an address, it'll give the latitude, longitude. You do not have to write this program, you do not have to build a database with all the zip codes and the latitude, longitude. Google service can be leveraged to get the latitude, longitude. This will be the future as we go on. More niche markets will be created with these microservices, and the software development will become an overarching of bringing these microservices together.
Okay. All right, we're going to take one more question from the panel, and then we'll move on to Q&A from the audience. Deepali, why don't you ask the last question?
Sure. So I want to ask the question on behalf of majority of us here, almost all of us here would want to know from the panel. You get pitched from small to medium sized businesses, basically like from us. So what makes you interested in talking to us, and what makes you ignore us? Amit, you want to take that?
So I've actually had to deal with a lot of this over the last 2 years because I work for a financial services company that is still innovating its stack, which is left over from a long time ago. One thing that I have seen are the ones that can actually explain the change in economics that we can expect to our business leaders much more than our technology leaders. Because in the past, you were selling IT, and so the primary buyers were in the technology organization. Once you start pitching things like AI and machine learning, to those of us who live and breathe this every day, these are very sexy words, and we know what they are, or we might get excited about them. but to the deeper organization, the people that are counting the beans, CEOs, they are not as exposed necessarily, if they are from an industrial, healthcare, financial services, that kind of background, to what AI can do for them. So I think the one advice I would have for you is have cross-functional stakeholders early in the sales process so you can build consensus outside of the CIO and the CTO. And that is the key to getting any of these newer technologies actually adopted, because otherwise they'll just think of these as buzzwords and they don't really understand why they need to invest in them.
Makes sense. Thank you. Shekhar, what are your thoughts on it?
Thanks for asking the question, Deepa. I think it's a very apt and interesting question for the audience here as well. I'd like to look at it as we consider as a market of one. And what I mean by is I'm a unique customer, and I believe that I'm a market of one, that I define my market, I'm the unique customer. And I want you to think about yourself as a unique vendor or a unique staffing service company. If you come and tell me that, hey, I'm a staffing services company and you need Java, cloud, whatever, you throw all the buzzwords, then I'm not interested in that conversation, right? Because I want you to study my company, what my needs are, and come to me with a very specific thing, and that will tell me that you have done your homework and you know what my need is, right? So let's say, for example, you see a press release of something saying that we have won a contract in defense. That would automatically translate to saying, okay, you are looking at this particular agency, you need a secret clearance, or you need certain attributes that are specific to that one, and then coming to me with that specific thing weeds out rest of your competition because you're already ahead of the curve at that point. So doing that research and coming with this very specific need is what will get you in front of the line and gives you the value. That will prove the value of yours. And companies like us will all day do business with you, because at the end of the day, we're all fighting for the same talent. Whoever gets that talent first and presents it is the one who is going to win at the end of the day.
Okay, thanks. Sridhar, then Alok.
Yeah, so in terms of projecting your skills or your abilities to help a client, most IT services companies, they tend to kind of get stuck in this capability articulation mode. While that is necessary, and more so when you're selling to a CIO or sitting down with a CTO, you need to elevate the game more going forward, especially in the context of digital transformation. So you need to add provocation to your arsenal, not just articulation of your abilities, because that is table stakes. If you're in the business, they expect you to have certain skills, certain offerings, but don't get too fixated on that alone. You need to elevate your game and provoke the customer. Try to, not that you're insulting them or crossing the boundary, overstepping your responsibility, but they expect you to really add value on the business side. And a lot of times the checkbooks don't necessarily solely belong to the CIO anymore. You're selling to the line vice president. So you need to have that business provocation as part of your argument.
Thanks.
I think some of it has already been echoed here. Being a CTO or chief product or whatever the officer is, we all are technology savvy, but more importantly, it's a humble job is when we interact with our customers. So the more you know about our customers, their problem, and speak to us in a way that helps us solve our customers' problem is what attracts the attention. So just knowing more about the customers, knowing more about the business. If it's just technology for the sake of technology, it's very vanilla. It just doesn't really get that attention. So I think that's where the change is, that anyone that kind of gets to the level, it's more because we start to know about our customers and our business. We are not just a pure technologist in that sense.
Awesome. AV team, we need a couple of mics for questions in the audience, please. Believe it or not, we burned through an hour and 20 minutes already, and I want to be respectful of time, and I know a lot of you are hungry. But the panel members agreed to stay on for an hour or so right after the panel. So with that, we are open for probably 2 or 3 questions, and panel members give brief answers. We want to get as many questions as possible. You can ask questions directly at any panel member or a general question, and any of them can jump in. Who has a question? Go ahead, Gopi. There's a mic coming in.
Most of the CEOs here are, accidental entrepreneurs in staffing. And nobody was born to become start a staffing company. It's a very lucrative business. It is easy to start. Somebody needs with a computer and then access to portals and access to clients can start a staffing business. It's so easy. Every one of us are a technologist at heart. Most of us invest in products and solutions. Often, success in the products is very meager. What is the advice this panel gives to this group to avoid wrong investments? And how do we make the successful products?
All right, Alok, go, jump in.
Sure.
A few things that I learned. One, I think we talked about what's changing in the software development life cycle. The lean agile is just not about doing things fast. It's about removing the wrong choices, get them out of the way faster, so that you are constantly improving. So it's very important. Don't start loving your idea. Start involving customers and follow these new practices that starts to remove the ambiguities, that start to remove the mistakes, that you can test it out early. So that's number one. And number two, I'm a strong proponent of really not only hire technology people, start grooming product manager. Product management is a discipline that really, for any company wanting to really get into the product side of the house, it's a very core skill set. It's a very hard-earned skill set because they are half business people, half analytical, half customer savvy. But you need a different kind of a skill set that complements your technology talent. Otherwise, more often than I've seen is that the passion of technology overtake what customers are willing to pay for. And it's not about end users, it's about the buyers. It's about where they are investing their budgets. So really recognizing what they will pay for example, artificial intelligence, machine learning. We can talk hundreds of ideas. Chances are customers will pay for nothing. So really finding where the budgets are, what they'll pay for, and you need to invest into that product management kind of a skill set before you start that idea, and follow the new methodologies that starts to remove out the complexities.
I just want to add to what Alok said, right? As we move to the world of AI and all the other new things that are coming, the software development lifecycle is going to change, right? That is one of the points I want to bring out. What is going to change is the power structure. When I look at software development, I classify it into two categories. One is developers of models and consumers of models, right? The world so far was all about consuming models by application developers, right? So it was all about applications. The world is moving to models. So you will have people specialized who will create models, and now models will create their own models, right? So you're going to go into that world. Once you go into that world, specialization is important. You can't be any gun for any job, right? You can't be guns for hire for any job. You have to become specialized in particular areas. And that starts with building product management as a capability. You need to think of yourself as a company. And what you are trying to provide is a skill set around certain services which are specialized.
Awesome. We'll take one more question. Any questions?
Let me add to that.
Oh, go ahead, Sridhar.
Part of the agile discipline is also the key tenet of MVP, minimally viable product. So you owe it to yourself to define what that is from several different angles, from monetization perspective, from a feature demonstration perspective, and also latching on to a couple of alpha customers, and then it builds on. And a lot of times wanting to do something very big and aiming so high might be a problem initially.
All right, we'll take one more quick question.
Oh, yes.
Okay, there's one, sorry.
Thank you. With all these big 5 technology trends so far, we talked about AI or cloud or so far. We are doing a lot of computing. We need huge computing power. We are building big machines. So what is the next disruption in this area to get more computing power? Is it something like quantum computers or something? Where is the industry going forward to solve this problem?
Yeah, let me take that on. You're right about quantum being the next wave, and what is happening now is because true quantum computing is very difficult to realize. You need 0 Kelvin temperatures and whatnot, and IBM and Microsoft and everyone and my company Fujitsu, we are all innovating in that space. But even as we are waiting for real quantum computing, there are quantum ready with existing hardware type of solutions that are out in the market, and that is being put to use. In fact, we are engaged in several enterprise class pilots putting quantum to, and in its current form itself, it is 20,000 times faster than existing computing power.
Okay, I don't know enough about quantum to comment, but it's coming. I feel it's a few years away. But I think for AI, which is something I understand, the computing of today is going to change fundamentally for AI, because the principle of AI is different. Today's computing was designed for precision. It was designed for doing transactions. Like bank, where like someone is giving you money, you need to know exactly how much money you got. AI, by the fundamental nature, is approximate, right? You don't talk about perfection in AI, right? You talk about approximating and approximating enough to get a higher probability. So the computing today, from what I see and what my company works on, is trying to move from a digital computing paradigm to more of an analog computing paradigm. And that will enable new forms of doing AI. Currently, if you look at deep learning is fundamentally driven by the advances that came from the gaming industry, right? Because of GPUs. But if you look at the current architecture, the amount of time it takes to send data from a CPU to GPU, that is the biggest bottleneck. And that is the reason why the biggest AI applications, including the ones that Google does or any other company does, is actually to a big part done in a hybrid fashion. So I think the biggest computing leap that we need to do today is the CPU to GPU interconnects and how we are able to create new accelerators which go beyond the GPU. And that is going to help us in the near term. Quantum, yes, it will come.
All right, with that, we are going to conclude our session and break for lunch. Wow, panel members, it was a wonderful session. And thank you for sharing all your knowledge with us today. And I appreciate you coming here and I appreciate your time. So on behalf of IT Serve, Kishore and myself, I would like to again thank you for your time.
Hey, governing board members and sponsors, please come on up. We'll take a picture with the panel,
Yep,
please.
let's take a picture.
Please.